So for the past couple of weeks, I have been sinking my teeth into Path of Exile, and as of recording, I have put in roughly 300 hours into the game. It might not seem much, but considering my status and my situation, like I have a day job and all that, that's a lot of hours for me. Now, just to put it out there, I am by no means a professional reviewer, and I don't think I consider this a review. This is more like a personal assessment review of the game on why I like it. So what I can do is just tell you things that I like about the game and tell you things that I dislike about the game. So let's get started. So Path of Exile is a looter ARPG developed by Grinding Gear Games and was released back in October 23 of 2013 if I'm not mistaken. Of course, if you play the game, you already know this. PoE at face value doesn't look like a complicated game. You explore the world, you kill mobs, you get loot, upgrade your gear, your skills, your stats. Simple and straightforward, akin to the likes of Last Epoch and the Diablo games, which I haven't really played any of the Diablo games. Regardless, simple, straightforward. But once you actually play the game and explore its mechanics, this is where it starts to get a bit more complicated. Now, I'm not going to be diving deep into the intricacies of the game, but I will say that for me, at least, PoE's steep learning curve is one of its strengths and its weaknesses. Now, one of the things that I really like about the game is its diversity in gameplay and gameplay mechanics. PoE has this thing called League Mechanics, which is basically just gameplay mechanics that was introduced in previous patches and is now a permanent part of the game due to positive feedback from the community. Take for example, Blight, which is the one that's on the screen right now, which is basically a tower defense style mode. You build towers, you just kill an amount of mobs, and you get reward and loot. Now, don't get me wrong, most of PoE's league mechanics boils down to the same thing, which is basically you just kill a bunch of stuff and get your rewards and your loot. But I think the most important thing here is presentation. Take, for example, Harvest, which is the one that I'm currently focusing on farming. So basically, you just go in, you kill a bunch of mobs, you get your harvest or your crops, and then you can sell it for currency or you can use it for crafting. Now, both of these league mechanics boils down again to the same thing, which is just kill a bunch of mobs. But the difference is the presentation of it. Blight is more focused on the tower defense, on building towers and defending the pump or whatever it's called, and it's fun. And you can AFK for the most part if you know what you're doing, and it can be pretty rewarding sometimes, most of the time. It does take quite a bit of time because of the nature of the game, while Harvest can be a run and done thing where you can practically clear it in like a minute or two if you have the DPS for it. Now, the same thing can be said about crafting and trading and other stuff within the game. It gives you options on how you want to approach it. Like, for example, crafting, you have the regular crafting where you can put one, like prefix or suffix. You have the Horde crafting, which uses the life force. This one is a more specific thing where you can choose a specific modifier. You have Delve crafting, which is again a more specific one, but this time you can cancel out certain modifiers into your equipment. You have currency crafting. You can use like exalted orbs, regal orbs, divine orbs. No one uses divine orbs, I would imagine. You have essence crafting as well, and then you have the trading system in the game. You have the trade chat, which is a more manual approach to trading. You have the trading website at the PoE website, at least that's what I use. And then you have the currency exchange, which is the one that they introduced. I think this was introduced in the Settlers of Kalgor patch, which I personally use a lot. All right, it might be boring to sit in the hideout and just yap, so we'll run like a very normal map while we talk about stuff. Now, so this is the character that I'm currently using right now. This is a Lightning Strike Trickster. Obviously, this is not my build. This is obviously a build that I just copied from other people because I don't have a PhD in build crafting in this game. So I just rely on other content creators to show me a build. Now, one of the things that I really like about the game when I first started playing it was discovering how the skills interact and work with each other. So, for example, again, if you've played the game, you already know what I'm talking about, but I just thought I'd mention it. So, for example, the skill that I'm using right now is Lightning Strike, which is basically a melee skill. You slam to the ground and then you send out like a bunch of like projectile thingies. Now, what's great about PoE is the support gems. So let me take these out real quick. Now, support gems are obviously by its name, it supports the skill that it's connected to. So Lightning Strike at its base is a simple strike like that. And you just send out projectiles and then you damage enemies along its path. But if I put in like returning projectiles, now you'll see that the projectiles will return to me and then it'll damage and pierce any enemy it passes through. And then I put in something like multi-strike support. So with just one click, you can see that it strikes 3 times. I think it is 3 times. Yeah, it is 3 times. And then you have like regular support gems which just amps your damage. And I think this is really cool. Like discovering this or seeing it from other people on how skills interact with one another is pretty fascinating and it's really satisfying to do. It's cool to try out like different stuff. So this is the one that I was talking about, the harvest thingy. This is the one that I'm currently really farming at the moment. And I am using crop rotation for this. I don't have scarabs to juice up my loot, but that's fine. As you can see, it can get pretty screen cluttered depending on the skill that you're using and depending on your build as well. But yeah, so this is basically just what you do. These types of games usually revolve around repetition. So you just do the same thing over and over again. You just, you know, gather more loot, more stuff to make your character stronger. Or you can try to create your own build. Alright, I might as well show this because I don't know. I think it'll be pretty cool to just include this in the video. I think this is one of the new boss fights that they introduced in the Settlers of Kalgur. I can basically just face tank this because of how my build is revolved. Because my build revolves around like a lot of energy leech, energy shield leech, and I have a bunch of evasion and block chance and physical damage reduction as well. Now what I do like as well is how boss fights are structured in the game. So far, all of the boss fights that, well, not all of them. There are some boss fights that I can just face tank, but for the most part, like the pinnacle bosses, like the end game bosses, they have actual mechanics that you need to learn, and for the most part, they don't seem unfair. And when I die, it's usually my lack of knowledge regarding the mechanics of the boss. And I appreciate that. You know, it's not just a simple, you just have to out damage or out heal the boss. Well, I guess you can depending on your build. But for the most part, they have actual mechanics that you need to play around with. And we're done with that. Can you give me the shield? No, okay. I mean, the shield that he drops is relatively cheap, so I could just buy it. And this gives me a lot of Verisium, which is nice. Now, one of the things that I really am not a fan of, and there's actually just a few like systems and mechanics that I'm not a huge fan of. One of them is the skill slots in the equipment. Oh shit. Oh nice. These ones, I am not personally I'm not a huge fan of it. I understand why it's there At least I think I understand. It's there to add value to some equipment, especially if it's like a very end game equipment. If you have like 6 slots all linked together, double corrupt or whatever, it adds value to said equipment. But again, I am not a huge fan of it, and this is just a personal preference thing. Now, for the most part, oh shit, there's two of them? Okay. For the most part, everything revolves around doing maps very, very quickly. Obviously, if you played the game, you know how it works. But if you're someone who's just trying to get into the game early on and trying to, just test it out, most of the time it just revolves around you clearing the map as fast as possible. Like zoom zoom builds are very popular. Now, regardless, PoE is a great game and I highly suggest trying it out. It's free to play and it's not pay to win. Most of the paid content in the game is just cosmetics. Now, you do have to pay for extra stash tabs, but at the start of the game, you don't really need to. I would suggest reaching endgame first and then seeing if you're willing to keep playing and then decide whether or not you're going to be purchasing anything in the game. Again, this might be a weird video because it's not entirely a review. This is just me yapping on why I love the game and why I play it so much over these past couple of weeks. And I actually started playing PoE because of Path of Exile 2, which is like 2 months, like not nearly 2 months away, less than 2 months away actually, which is I'm pretty excited about as well. Now, one of the things that I both like and dislike about Path of Exile is its complexity. Discovering how certain skills can interact with one another, figuring out how the crafting works, finding out the best strat for making currency and all that, it can feel pretty rewarding. But at the same time, it can feel frustrating when there's a lot of nuances that the game doesn't really outright tell you. Now, I do understand that PoE doesn't need to ponder to everyone because I am like a firm believer of like a game shouldn't be made for everyone. Every game should have their own thing going on per se, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad idea to make the game easier to understand, especially for new players who haven't tried games like these ones. Now, moving on to the combat. Combat is pretty straightforward. You just run around the map, you use your skills, you kill hordes of enemies, and it feels satisfying. It feels good. I think my only gripe is that most of the time you are really stuck with using just one or two skills, mostly one skill that can just, delete an entire horde of mobs in one click. But at the same time, it feels good because the skills does interact well with the world, if that makes sense. And it's fun trying to try out different things and different build. And I do appreciate that the game does allow me to make a lot of characters. I think you can make up to like 20 something characters, so that's a plus for me because I can try out like lots of different builds. But you do have to start all over again. You have to do the entire campaign and all that, which I think is fine. I think that's fine, at least for me. It lets me pace myself, understand the game more. Now, regarding the story of the game, I didn't really pay attention to all of the lore and like the overall story of the campaign. And it's not because it's not interesting, but I don't think like that's the main selling point of the game. There is lore. I'm pretty sure that there's like a very deep lore within the game. I've seen like a lot of videos across YouTube like explaining like the intricacies and like deep diving into the lore of this game. So if that's something you enjoy, there is material for it. Like you can really sink your teeth into exploring the world and the world building of the game. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can think about. I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about, but at the same time, I didn't really have a script prepared for the game. But that is it for this video, this weird assessment of why I play and like Path of Exile. And I do hope you give it a try. It is free to play, so give it a couple of hours, see how you enjoy it, see how it plays for you. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment down below what you think. Did you agree to some of my points? How long have you been playing Path of Exile? What's your build? I'm really curious as to what you guys are playing and see if I'm interested in it. And subscribe if you want to support the channel. And I will see you guys in the next one. GG's.